the meeting. My name is Petra Sultan, and with my partner in crime, Doug Silverstein, we're running this Environment and Sustainability Thrive Action Group meeting, our monthly meeting on battery storage. Here's some information about, you want to go back to the Zoom information? Or do you think everybody's got it by now? Anyway, these are things that are helpful if you are not familiar with Zoom yet. We are recording this, but not only for our own information. If you're uncomfortable with that, now's a good time to get off. So Thrive is the Alliance of Nonprofits for San Mateo County, and the Environmental Sustainability Initiative is part of what this tag is. We are a membership-based organization, and we do a lot of different things, as you can see from our from the slide. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to say a couple of things about some events that are coming up. There's a lot going on in our world right now, and I am thrilled that we are continuing to talk about things that are important and continue to be important, like the environment. We also are paying attention to a lot of the other stuff that's going on. Specifically right now, I want to just address kind of the Black Lives Matter and our Thrive's response to it. We have a letter on our website, but we also want to talk a little bit about the work we do. And one of the things we do is we do a lot of work around civic participation, because we really believe that representation is power. And so one of the things we're working on is the census, and I hope that everyone here has already filled out their census, but having everyone counted really helps with representation. The other thing we do is a lot around voting, and we have two events coming up. One is about the candidate pipeline. And I'm sure a lot of you know this, but in San Mateo County, we are the worst in the Bay Area as far as representation. We are only 40% white, but our elected, well, our Board of Supervisors is 100% white. But even down on a city level, we also have a lot of issues with our representation. So we're talking about the candidate pipeline on July 8th. And on July 30th, we're going to talk about votes, voter, and voting, which is about getting people more engaged in voting. And fun fact, environmentalists are lousy voters. So we do want the environmental community to get out and vote, because it really does matter. The executive director of Common Cause California will be our keynote speaker, and then we'll be talking to some local leaders as well. So hopefully you can join us for that and our many other opportunities. We also have a mailing list. So if you're not already on Thrive's mailing list, we have a specific mailing list just for the environment community. In addition to that, we have a weekly events mailing list that talks about all of the events that we hold, as well as from our partners. We have over 200 members that are different community-based organizations in San Mateo County, so you can find out what else is going on. We also have a policy and advocacy newsletter that talks about how you can get more involved on the policy side, which is one of the things that I do. So I will turn it over to Doug now. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Make sure you guys can hear me. Petra, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, great. So I've been working with Thrive for over a year now, and the last 2 months as a staff member. Very grateful to be a part of Thrive. It's an incredible organization. I work on the environment and sustainability area, and we bring together the cross-sector group of 5 sectors: nonprofit, government, business, youth, and philanthropy, to these meetings every month. We focus on 5 different disciplines: climate, energy, food, land, transit, waste, 7 different, and water. And our mission is to identify environment and sustainability areas and actions where we can significantly lower our ecological footprint. One exciting new project that we launched in April, which we are a couple of months into and about to deliver our first output, is an impact group called Reduce and Rethink Single-Use Plastics in San Mateo County. It's, tell you more, we talked a little bit about it last time, we'll tell you more about it next time, but it's our first attempt to bring together the community around a single issue and move an item forward. So we bring a different topic to the conversation each month, and this month we're talking about batteries. I guess we would put that in the area of energy and climate. And we're honored to have Peninsula, well, I should add that we have Peninsula Clean Energy and Mid-Penn Open Space, Mid-Penn Regional Open Space as sponsors for the entire environment and sustainability community meetings. But this month we have Peninsula Clean Energy as a speaker, and I'm going to move to the next slide and let Petra introduce Kirsten. And she's going to then give a 15 minutes or so on the battery resilience programs.
So we are really appreciative of our partnership with Peninsula Clean Energy. Kirsten has been a huge supporter of our work. And I want to just take a quick second to talk about the plastics work because Doug kind of underplayed it. It's a huge project and we are very excited to be able to present it, hopefully fully formed in a couple of months. But Doug has arranged, we have 15 people working on it and another 15 people who are advising it. And we're hoping to be able to actually create some movement in San Mateo County with the deep research that's been done. So now I'd like to introduce Kirsten. Kirsten previously co-founded and directed a nonprofit think tank promoting innovative local climate mitigation and adaptation policy. She authored the Community Resilience Toolkit, featured on the Cake Climate Adaptation Exchange and used by grassroots groups and policymakers in more than 30 countries. Kirsten also co-founded the Local Clean Energy Alliance to promote community choice energy in 2008. And just Peninsula Clean Energy and with Kirsten, they've been doing some really innovative stuff and we're so proud to be partners with them and really looking forward to your presentation. So Kirsten, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and welcome everybody to the Zoom meeting. It's great to have such a huge turnout. Great, so I'm Kirsten Andrews-Schwind with Peninsula Clean Energy and Senior Manager of Community Relations. And Doug, am I asking you to advance slides?
Kirsten, can you be a little louder actually?
Just talk okay, let's see, is that better?
That helps, thanks.
Okay, great, good. Now is Doug advancing the slides?
I'll be advancing your slides, yes.
Okay, great, next slide. Okay, most of you may be familiar with Peninsula Clean Energy, but I'll go really quickly over the background for folks who are not. We are a community choice energy agency, which means we are a local public agency in San Mateo County. Legally, we are a joint powers authority of all of the county of San Mateo and all of the 20 cities. And here's a fun fact. Every single city council member in every city council in San Mateo County voted unanimously to join our JPA in 2016. We were formed to meet climate action goals and create a better future for our kids. Next slide. So how this works and how all the community choice energy agencies work, and there's 20 of them across California now, is that we do the electricity generation part of energy. So that is, so we're behind the scenes from PG&E, buying electricity from cleaner sources such as wind and sun and some hydro. And then, and PG&E still maintains the grid. They do what's called the delivery part. Our electricity generation rates are actually 5% lower than PG&E's, which helps everyone in San Mateo County save collectively $18 million a year and help the environment. Next slide. So today I'm focusing on batteries and resilience, and we're concerned about that topic in San Mateo County because of the public safety power shutoffs. You all remember last fall our power went off as a preventative measure during high fire threat days. And this map shows the extent of the largest PSPS event in San Mateo County on October 26th. And roughly 57,000 electricity accounts were impacted in San Mateo County. And of great concern to us, about 270 medical baseline accounts. And these are people who have signed up for a special discount because they have a medical appliance at home that uses electricity. So those folks who are relying on electricity for a life-saving medical appliance had their electricity shut off twice last fall. Next slide. Now, as I mentioned, Peninsula Clean Energy does not maintain the grid. That is PG&E's job. However, we are concerned about the impacts of our local community as a local agency, even though we have no formal role in the PSPS events. Next slide. Now, there are some challenges associated with backup power, which is what we're, oh, can you hear me okay? Okay, so there are some challenges involved with backup power solutions for when the power goes down. The most common backup solution is, of course, diesel generators. And they are noisy, and they are polluting, and they have emissions, and they requires refueling. They can create their own fire risk as well. And that's why Peninsula Clean Energy is really supporting backup batteries as an alternative to diesel generators as a cleaner solution. The challenge there is higher upfront cost. And so we're rolling out some programs to help bring the cost down and make it easier. Next slide. And it's a great time. Oh, it's a great time to be, whoever's has some background noise, perhaps you can mute yourselves. Yeah, that's better. Okay, great. Now it's a great time to be rolling out battery backup programs because the state is offering some really nice rebates on backup battery programs right now. A program called Self-Generation Incentive Program. And it's a CPUC program from the Public Utilities Commission. And the rebates are administered by PG&E. Often the solar and battery installers handle the rebate application. And if you live in one of the high fire threat zones, or you were impacted by 2 PSPS events last year and you have a medical device, you basically get 100% rebate on the cost of a backup battery. So that's the $1,000 per kilowatt hours. That's designed to be about 100% of the cost of the battery system, not necessarily the solar system, just the battery system. But any homeowner gets about a 25% rebate in the cost of a backup battery system, and any non-residential customer gets about a 35% rebate. So it's an amazing time to get out there and take advantage of these rebates. All right, and so our resilience programs that we're rolling out right now are for critical municipal facilities. So this is a list of facilities that we have been working with our local cities and counties to create. The picture there is of Half Moon Bay's new library. Half Moon Bay experienced 2 PSPS events last fall. Interesting, this new library has a nice solar system on it, but because it's not islandable, the system went down. And this could be a cooling center if they were able to keep the library open. So this is one of the buildings that we're working with to provide backup batteries as a critical municipal facility. Then we're also rolling out programs for medically vulnerable residents and for all residential and commercial buildings. Next slide, please. So we're rolling out a program called Power on Peninsula. And this is actually, we have a contract going to our board of directors tonight, meetings at 6:30, and you can see details at the Peninsula Clean Energy website. Everyone is welcome to join our board meetings, in which we'll be sharing a contract with our board for approval with Sunrun, the solar and batteries installing company. We went through an extensive RFP process, actually with a number of our other sister agencies in the Bay Area. And we all, through a thorough vetting process, decided to use Sunrun as our vetted contractor. So Sunrun will be offering discounted solar and battery storage systems to San Mateo County residents, but also in Santa Clara County and in Alameda County through our sister agencies. These systems will be islandable, so that if your power goes out, they will keep going. They will keep powering your battery through the solar during the day, and then your battery can keep going at night. Though during the 360 some days of the year when the power is actually on, then the battery can actually power up during the day with your solar, and then dispatch or put that power back out into your house during the evening hours. And those are the dirtiest hours on the grid. That's when the sun goes down on all the solar panels, and more natural gas is used. So that is a time that is really important to have more backup batteries powering the grid. Sunrun will also be passing on those state rebates to customers as upfront savings, and handling the rebate application and offering other financing options as well for both residential and commercial buildings. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned, in California, we use a lot of solar, which is fantastic. But solar only works when the sun is shining. So here is a graph of hours of the day in the bottom, 1 through 24, and it shows that, the nice big, this shows all of the renewable energy sources in California, and a nice big, orange peak in the middle with the solar. But note what happens, of course, in the evening when the sun is going down. That's a real challenge. Now, Peninsula Clean Energy has set a big, hairy, ambitious goal of providing 100% renewable energy 24 hours a day in each hour of the day by 2025. This is actually a very difficult thing to do because, there's just less renewable at night. And so batteries are going to play a big role in that. We have some utility scale batteries, but we also are investing in distributed batteries in people's homes to help us reach that goal as well. So that's another reason why we're doing this project. Next slide. And many of you in the energy world will recognize the duck curve. So this shows the difference between peak demand and renewable energy production in a number of the previous 8 years. So each line there is a year. And again, we have hours of the day on the bottom. And that basically shows that in the middle of the day, in 2020, solar is generally meeting a lot of demand for electricity in California. But then you have this peak, which is known as the neck of the duck, or the ramp, in the evening hours. So that's when it's really important to have those backup batteries powering your house to the extent possible, so that we can avoid bringing on peaker plants, which are generally natural gas power plants. Avoid using that natural gas during those hours and use your battery instead. Next slide. I also mentioned we have programs for our medically vulnerable customers, folks who have medical appliances at home. This can include CPAP machines, it can include electric wheelchairs, oxygen concentrators, and a number of other medical devices. And so this map shows the areas that are eligible for those highest level of state subsidies. These purple areas are the high fire threat zones, and then the orange areas are circuits that were depowered at least twice during the PSPS events last fall. So anyone in those areas, if they're homeowner and they have a medical device, qualifies for that 100% rebate on their backup battery system. So basically they get their backup battery and solar a system financed at low to no cost to them. But that kind of leaves renters out in the cold. So we are also doing a bulk purchase of Yeti 3000 backup batteries to donate to renters in these areas, focusing on low-income renters. And we are contracting with a couple of local nonprofit social service organizations to do outreach in both English and Spanish in these areas and to sign people up for that. Next slide. Okay, that's what I've got for you, and I'm happy to take questions and see there's a bunch of them in the chat here.
Yeah, this is Doug. I want to just start out and thank you first and reflect on where we've come since October 2016, which is when you guys first released this, when I think I first met you. But we really should tip our hats to Peninsula Clean Energy for all you guys have accomplished in the last, I want to go back to the power in the peninsula slide. Fascinating how you guys spun up all, I was at one of your board meetings 3 years ago, and you authorized a 200 megawatt solar panel, and I was fascinated since then. You've only gotten more ambitious, and this program here, Power in the Peninsula, I think is extremely significant. I'd love to have you speak a little bit more about this, because if I understand correctly, and maybe I'll phrase this in a question, is do you mean that we can actually island ourselves anytime? We can use our own battery power in our house to power our appliances at night? And can you utilize battery storage for someone else's house next to us or anywhere in the area?
Okay, that's a couple of questions kind of lumped
Yes,
together there.
this is cool stuff. I want to learn more. I hope others do, but I'll let
Oh, I
others
see a
ask
bunch of
different questions.
I do see a bunch of questions in the chat. Yeah, but I believe your first question is, can you island yourself at any point? I think it probably depends on the system and how it's designed. I'm not sure it's a great idea to island yourself if the power is still on. But the idea is that we will be programming your battery, or rather Sunrun would be programming the batteries to be powering your house during the times when the grid would be dirtiest, obviously, to help smooth out that duct curve, like help the duct extend its neck. And so, the times are also going to be most beneficial to you because we also, our new rates rolling out, time of use rates. And actually most solar customers are already on time of use rates, which means they pay more for energy during certain hours of the day. And so your battery will be designed to dispatch during those hours to help you save some money as well. In terms of whether you can work with your neighbor, not at this point. That is a microgrid, and that is a whole nother ball of wax, and which involves not so much kind of engineering hurdles as more kind of regulatory hurdles.
Okay, so if 50% of our county had this and the other 50 did not, there's only the people that have this would be able to lower the use of use of dirty energy during the times in which we don't have solar power from the grid.
Well, if we had to buy 50% less energy during the ramp, that'd be amazing. And maybe we could buy that from our own utility scale batteries. And so that helps clean up the grid for everybody.
Awesome. I love this. I have not been tracking the questions as closely as I could. Petra, if you want to jump in and
actually,
or
our other guests have been answering the questions and have done
okay.
So I think great. Why don't we move on to the rest of the panel, and then at the end we'll take questions for everybody.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Welcome. So we're honored to have three experts in batteries. Hang on, I want to mute. There we go. So thank you, Kirsten, again. So we have three experts in the industry who all have great experience in clean energy across the board, but also in battery technology. And I want to introduce Holly first, and I'll ask her to say a little bit about her company, and then we'll get to John and Sean. Then I've got a couple of questions for each of them, and then we're going to open up the floor to questions. So first, Holly is a marketing manager at Proterra. Holly manages marketing communications at Proterra, a locally based company that designs and manufactures zero-emission transit buses and EV technology for commercial applications. Previously, she managed U.S. marketing for Mercedes-Benz Energy, and prior to that was at NG Storage, focused on marketing battery storage systems for commercial and industrial applications. And I asked Holly if she would give us an update on Proterra, because you guys have been making a lot of progress. We're very proud that you guys are here in San Mateo County and Burlingame, but we can't keep track of your progress as fast as you make it. So please bring us up to speed quickly on what you guys have been up to.
You got it. Thank you, Doug and Petra, for hosting. Definitely happy to be here and talk with everyone today. I'm guessing you can hear me okay, so just jump in if I have any issues. Okay, great. So as Doug said, I manage marketing communications at Proterra. We are in Burlingame. We make electric transit buses. You can see one of them right there. And we also do sell our battery technology to other companies that are making electric vehicles for commercial usage. So You can see a few pictures down the bottom there of a school bus, a coach bus, a delivery truck. So we are helping other companies also electrify those heavy duty vehicles and medium duty vehicles. We're manufacturing all of the batteries that go into our buses in our Burlingame headquarters. And then we also have manufacturing facilities in Los Angeles and in Greenville, South Carolina, where we actually make the buses. So we're putting the batteries together over here and then shipping them out to Southern California or South Carolina to go into our buses. Company was founded in 2004, so we've been delivering now electric buses for 10 years. We have over 100 customers now, more than 500 electric buses on the roads in North America, and about 1,000 sold. So we are mainly in the US, thank you. And we also have just expanded recently into Canada. So we have buses on the ground in Toronto and in Edmonton. So they're really being put to the test in those cold winters up there as well. We're definitely the market leader for electric buses in North America. We've delivered more than any other manufacturer at this point, but we're still the startup of the industry. We are competing against the big incumbents that have been selling diesel buses for many years, as well as, you know, a couple international companies, mainly BYD, which is from China, and they have a presence over here too. So a few local customers to note that might be interesting to everyone on the line would be Samtrans, San Mateo. Samtrans, they've purchased 10 of our electric buses. We've also got some just going into service at San Francisco Airport. San Jose Airport has 10 of our electric buses as well. And then we recently closed a deal with the San Francisco MTA. They have finally gotten into the game, and they are purchasing a handful of electric buses from each of the 3 main companies in the space to test them out head to head on those steep San Francisco streets. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good brief update. I don't want to take up too much of the time here, Doug, and we can get deeper into it as we go.
Yeah, let us know how we can vote for your buses in San Francisco. That's exciting, and we're rooting for you. If you haven't driven by their facility on Rollins Road, go pay a visit, say hello when they reopen. I'm going to go back a slide and introduce John Sarter, CEO of Off the Grid Design, another great local resource we have in the battery space. John is a sustainable designer and developer, innovator in systems integration, and expert in real estate, renewable energy, and transportation. He has owned and operated his firms, Sarter Construction and Design, Off the Grid Design, and Sol Lux Alpha since 1986. A recognized leader in the solar and storage space since 2008. John founded the Microgrid Development Group in San Francisco in 2014 to unite a consortium of technology, energy, engineering, and other professionals committed to creating a resilient and sustainable 100% renewable energy future. John, thank you for joining us. I'm going to forward to your one slide and ask that you give a quick update on what you're up to, which is really exciting.
Great, thank you. Sorry for that wordy introduction there, but
that's great.
been working on a lot. So this is a new product that I'm integrating into my products and helping usher this product into California initially, and then the rest of the US. This is a solar inverter combined with a 2-port electric vehicle charger, and one of those ports is bidirectional. So what that means is that will allow the power in your electric vehicle to be brought into your home to power your home, and also to be used as an ancillary asset to the grid. So you as a consumer, when you own an electric vehicle, you can power your house with it, and you can also participate in grid market and actually monetize your vehicle while it's sitting there. This is several different screenshots, so you can click on any of these here to see what's happening in your car, your home. Weather predictive. They found a way to gamify it between users. This screen kind of shows you what each vehicle is doing, either charging from the grid or powering back to the house, potentially. This is a screen that'll show you how you're monetizing it, either how you're saving money by load shifting, by using your stored energy at peak times of use and saving money, and then also what you might be able to make off of selling those services to the grid, allowing the grid to use that battery for energy storage for renewables, and then take it back when necessary. This is the weather predictive part of it. And this is a screen that kind of shows everything that's going on, the power that your home is using, the power each car is either taking from your solar or from the grid or giving back to your home, and what your solar is doing, what your stationary energy storage might be doing if you have that as well, and what's happening as far as energy going either to or from the grid. So this is not only a solar inverter and vehicle charger, it's a whole home energy management system that is really a phenomenal product. It'll be coming on the market in the 4th quarter of this year, and I plan to use it on any solar and storage project I do moving forward, because what it does is it cuts the costs of having energy storage by as much as 50%, because you don't have to have necessarily any stationary battery. Your car is the battery. But if you want if anything, you can have a much smaller stationary battery as a result. So this has been a long time.
John.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
No, I should say, John, last year at the San Francisco climate, what was the big conference that Governor Brown and Bloomberg did? You showed
Right.
John showed displayed his real estate venture in San Francisco, a condo complex in the Proterra. Amazing design, and we're glad to have you pushing the envelope in the residential space, as well as all the other work you do.
Yeah.
So I want to then introduce Sean Armstrong, and then we're going to go to a series of questions, and I'm going to open it up for the floor to ask questions as well. So we're lucky to have Sean in our area, although he's also straddles between the Bay Area and up in Northern California in Humboldt County. But Sean Armstrong has co-designed the largest portfolio of all-electric 100% solar-powered residents in the nation. Sean's experience began in 1995 giving tours of a campus demonstration home run on renewable power, and then in 2005 he joined a large developer as a project manager who was able to translate zero net energy design into competitive awards of government funds for low-income housing. His work funded low-income housing with lower cost, higher efficiency, all-electric design paired with affordable solar power, which won the International 2017 United Nations World Habitat Award Grand Prize. And I won't list all the other prizes that won. I shortened it to say other national and statewide accolades, because there's a lot more that I could have read. So Sean, thanks for joining us and all that you do. I'm going to jump forward to your one slide and ask that you give a brief overview of what you're up to before I jump to questions.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Audio check. Do I sound okay?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds
cool.
Good.
So as mentioned, I work in affordable housing, and what that's helpful in is that it keeps me very tightly focused on budgets. So I'm always looking for the most cost-effective way to get a goal accomplished. This project in front of you is the one that won the United Nations Award and got the Department of Energy Award and such, because it was an early generation, all-electric, 100% solar-powered apartment complex. What you can't quite see, because it's phase 2, is the next stage of innovation, which is that we started using the water heaters as batteries. Now, when you're looking at how much power does a house or an apartment use in a day that you might offset with a battery, if you are able to, say, offset 5 kilowatt hours a day, that it takes care of all of the cooking and the lighting in a kitchen and maybe like charging a cell phone in an emergency. So 5 kilowatt hours in a day. The water heater can deal with maybe you can probably store 1 kilowatt hour of heating. So in the day, you can run it hotter, say up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. and then have thermal mixing valves, so it still gets delivered at a safe temperature. 120, 125 is usually what leaves a tank. But that extra 15 degrees or 20 degrees of heat, that can last you all the way through the evening, or most homes, at least, like 6-7 person households have found that they struggle to last through an evening with a tank of hot water. So this battery strategy that I'm sharing with you, this we've found is to be the least expensive way to store 5% of the entire project's energy in storage, off-grid storage. Dispatchable in the evening when not using electricity to provide it. It's, been stored, now we're using it, and we're offsetting the demand of the water heater. So that's one version of the least expensive storage, thermal storage. But recognizing you can't make lights turn on with your thermal storage, you can't operate a stove or, get a computer working off of hot water. So our second step that we've been doing in affordable housing has definitely been a response, not even to this competitive funding and grant funding, which is how we're getting thermal storage into our developments, is because it's a competitive scoring advantage to commit to doing that storage work. So they get the affordable housing funds they're looking for. Where we've actually started putting electric batteries is after the power outages. It's a really real, an entire community without any energy, particularly when it's an all-electric apartment complex. It's true that most devices that are gas use electricity today. A furnace uses electricity for the fan, and there's electric ignition for the water heater, electric ignition for the dryer, and for the gas stove. All these things require electricity in modern equipment. But the ownership still looks at this and thinks, this sucks. These people have no power for a day or 2 or 3 days sometimes. So we've started to put in batteries. And the innovation that's interesting to share with you is the demand. Well, what we've been doing is just powering the kitchen. So we'll take a kitchen in an apartment complex and we'll wire it to the central hallway power. So all the hallway power comes down to a panel, comes down to a place where it's all sort of gathered and delivered. And we'll have a battery just for the hallway lights and then each kitchen. So people can cook food, keep the food cold, and have lights and be able to charge a cell phone or a laptop computer. We'll energize just the USB plugs. So we have enough power for people to stay safe and fed. They're not going to be warmer or colder. They're not going to have hot water necessarily after 3 days or so. It's about how long a water heater would last if you weren't using it much. I know this, having had to deal with this during the power outages with my heat pump water heater. Like, okay, I keep it a little bit hotter than normal. How long can we frugally get by? I would say 3 days. And tanks of hot water lose their temperature maybe 5-10 degrees a day. So depends, everything depends, but in that range. So that's sort of been our new innovation, is we're going to do central batteries, and they've been less expensive than generators. Not necessarily easier, but not harder either. Putting in gas to deliver to a generator, which is the alternative for backup power, turns out it's very expensive to get gas through a development. Parking lots and buildings, everything's in the way. So when you're just putting in gas for a generator, you get to see like, oh, that's $130,000 just to use a generator 1 day a year.
Sean,
go ahead.
I'm going to jump in for a second because I just want to highlight how all the different. I'll jump to the group questions quickly, but I want to highlight how interesting this topic is, in that how many different kind of variables batteries are used in terms of in residential design, in a microgrid, in a scalable grid, across mobility for cars as well as stable. I just think the technology has opened up a whole new set of applications for clean energy. One question I want to jump to, I'm going to go back to the slide of all of our speakers, and I get this got this question from a few different folks who I talked to about this topic in this session, is about the life cycle of a battery. And want to open this to the panel. Is a common question is extracting raw materials from the earth and disposing them at the end of life. Do we understand the challenges associated with the life cycle, full life cycle of batteries, storage in particular, and what do we see as solutions? I think Holly wanted to address this, but I'll let the other speakers speak to it if they like, but I want to move to Holly, if you could unmute yourself and quickly address this one.
Yeah, no problem. And I think I'll focus a little bit more on the second part of the question, because that's what I hear a lot more concerns about. On the first half, extracting raw materials from the earth, the main concern we hear about that is around the fact that, you do need some minerals like cobalt, for example, that are often coming out of mines in developing countries, and they don't all have ethical labor practices. We have agreements to only get cells from companies that have policies around that. So they're only going to be sourcing things like cobalt from, mines that have ethical labor practices. So that's the main concern I hear on the front end of that question. But on the back end of the question, that's definitely something that a lot of people do ask about, which is what happens to the battery at the end of its life. And the first thing is that these batteries, at least for what we're doing, so in the transit world, I'm focused on heavy duty transportation using batteries. And so we have on one of our standard buses about 440 kilowatt hours of battery storage. So that is a massive amount of power. Say it could power home for, depends on the home, but let's say 2 weeks. It's a lot of energy storage. So what happens is after the end of the vehicle's life, which could be 10 or 12 years for a bus, what you're going to have is some amount of battery degradation. So you won't have the full amount of energy that you did on day one. That's just what happens to all batteries. They lose some energy over their lifetime, and that's called degradation. But for a bus application, or really any electric vehicle, when the battery comes to the end of its life for the vehicle, it's still going to have significant capacity. So you'll reach a point where the battery has lost, its ability to give you enough range that you need in that vehicle. That's when you're going to swap it out. But what you still have is a huge energy storage system that could have 70% of its original energy. And so then what gets really interesting is looking at what can we do with this battery after it's been in a vehicle. You start thinking about second life battery applications. So then we can put them into stationary battery storage banks that can be paired with solar systems, just like we were talking about. They can be providing energy back to the grid. They could be used by commercial companies that want to offset their electric bill. So there are a lot of ways you could use the battery in a second life situation after it's been in a vehicle. And that could be 12 years down the line. And then after that, say it's reached the end of that second life, then we get into recycling. And so our battery packs are made of aluminum, and they have lithium-ion battery chemistry. So we have gone out of our way to make our packs recyclable. The aluminum is, fully 100% recyclable. And then we actually have found a partner that specializes in extracting and repurposing the rare earth minerals that are inside of those battery cells. So our partner can actually recycle up to 99% of that content inside of the packs. And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, the technology has been advancing, but it's also, there's a lack of standardization. There's a lack of, you know, requirements for certain companies to make sure they're really implementing these best practices. So, you know, we are pushing the industry to take more responsibility, because some companies have historically just thrown their batteries into a hazardous waste incinerator. That is not the way to go, and it's not the only option. So you can actually recycle 99% of our batteries. And so, yeah, that's the route that we've gone in when looking at end of life.
Thank you. Good to know. And I was going to ask a question about technology, but I'd rather stay on applications of batteries. And so I want to throw out one more question before we get to the audience questions, and I will allow any of you guys to go at this one if you'd like. Adoption. So in our environment and sustainability community, we get excited about cool uses and fancy integration of battery storage, but in the broader areas in residential and commercial markets, where do you guys see widespread adoption beyond the early adopters that will really lead to transformational change?
I'd love to speak.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so in my opinion, once you can use your car battery to power your home and also provide services to the grid, which can essentially flatten the duck curve entirely eventually once we have enough of EV adoption, and also allow you to share energy with other homes and businesses, because you can move it around in your vehicles and start to create microgrids without wires essentially. That's going to create mass adoption of EVs and an adoption of much greater energy storage at the same time.
So when can we do that? I mean, can I go out and buy? I have a 2015 Nissan Leaf. I could get a newer one, but when can I start doing that? When can someone, you know, the average person do that?
So the product is coming out in Q4 of this year. They're going to have a limited amount of availability, but next year production will ramp up, and so by next spring and summer, it'll be widely available and anybody can install it. Very easy to install product, and I think for the money that you pay for it, it's a phenomenal value for what you're getting. It not only increases the value of your home, but the value of owning an electric vehicle really is. So that's why I'm really excited about the potential it has for increasing adoption rates for EVs.
Excellent.
I'll put out there, my version of that answer would be that, batteries are not at this moment cost effective in their own right. Like there isn't a good business argument if you're just doing kilowatt hours. That said, so batteries are not being purchased for financial reasons as much as they are for resiliency reasons. You kind of need a wealthy owner, to be honest, to be able to front up the cash for buying resiliency. So what I'm seeing is that wealthy owners of apartment complexes are places where people are actually buying batteries. That's just in my experience, my little domain. But these are people who are wealthy and have responsibility for lots and lots of people's lives, some of whom have medical needs. Within an affordable housing development, might be 10% of the population has a disability. And then within that, maybe a third of them have a true medical issue. So that's larger than the normal amount of the population. So they have extra responsibilities. And I think that funding in the state right now is heavily targeting low-income housing to try to address the overlap of needs and an opportunity as well, to have one central battery that can serve a lot of people.
Okay.
I would say that the state subsidies are going fast, and that they're really ramping up sales of backup batteries. According to the records we're seeing from PG&E, which is managing them, is that they're going through the money much faster than anybody anticipated. So that seems to be, not surprisingly, if you make them less expensive, then people get more interested.
And that's new to me that we had these subsidies. How long will they last? And is it really just afford the medical? What's driving? Who's buying them?
Right. And it actually I had a slide on this, the S-chip bonanza slide. The The biggest rebate is for the medically vulnerable folks who are in the high fire threat areas or were impacted by 2 PSPS events. If you want to see this map, just Google CPUC high fire threat map, and then you can zoom it. You can put in your address and see if you're in the area. The folks who've been impacted by 2 PSPS events, the map is less reliable, so I wouldn't recommend. It's pretty much everyone on the coast from Montara through the southern part of our coast in San Mateo County. But those folks are eligible for the 100% rebate on the battery systems to the state. Everybody, all residential buildings are eligible for the 25% rebate. All commercial or non-residential buildings, including government, etc., are eligible for 35% rebates on those batteries. So you don't have to be in the high fire threat zone or have a device to qualify for the 25 or the 35% rebates. And again, if you go through Sunrun, they will finance the rebate. They will apply for the rebate and just give you the savings up front, so you don't have to put the money up yourself.
Okay. So I want to open it up to anyone who wants to raise their hand or wave their hand and ask a question for any of the panelists. Who do someone raise their hand? Oh, Lisa, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was trying to find the raise your hand. I have a question about the California zero net energy requirement, building and residential architecture. I have a lot of clients interested, well, they've all kind of gone away for now. I'm hoping they'll come back when we can work again. Interested in doing detached ADUs on their properties. And it looks like that requires solar panels, but I don't really see why, since we have Peninsula Clean Energy providing basically 100% clean energy to everyone in San Mateo County. If you're building a new house in San Mateo County, can't you get away without solar panels because Peninsula Clean Energy is already providing you clean energy?
Let me take a whack at that one. I do a lot of work in code. There's two things to mention. One is that the 2020 code, which applies to all residences, studios, apartment complexes of 3 stories and less, and everything in between, uniform code for the state. It requires solar for about 2/3 of the energy budget of the house, not 100%. They left that last third as a budget for using gas for water heating and space heating. So the offset, if you're looking at it as a total energy, like mixed energy, electricity and gas, if you just mix it all together, it's about a 60% offset. It's intended to be in a gas electric hybrid home. It's supposed to be 100% of the electricity. So you can call it a zero net electric code.
Oh.
In an all electric home though, it's still only at that 60%. So it's really only a zero net electric code in a gas electric hybrid home. It's very small compared to like, oh, it's zero net energy. So there's that. They required it because the code since '74, when Reagan signed it into place, the Warren-Alquist Act requires that the energy code be cost effective, and adding solar is one of the most cost effective measures in lowering the 25-year ownership cost. So they could put in skinny triple windows, or they could put in super efficient this or that, but it turns out solar is one of the most cost effective things at this point. And their code is supposed to be cost effective. That's the law, is that they're supposed to change the code to help people make wiser energy choices over a 25-year mortgage. And so that's the basic logic. And I think the third thing is that my understanding is that if you are heavily shaded and you don't have access, that you can provide documentation of your use of 100% renewable energy through the grid. And that can be accepted by a building official. But I haven't dealt with that personally, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But I understand that's the third path.
And to the solar being more cost effective, it's getting more cost effective all the time too. That's one of the wonderful things. Both solar and batteries, the costs are coming down radically. So it's really a great time to jump in.
Kirsten,
any other questions?
throw in on that one?
Yeah.
Oh, Kirsten, did you have something to add?
No, I think that was a good response.
Okay.
So, John, one of you mentioned that batteries not effective or not cost effective, but can't you have less solar on your roof if you have batteries and you use your own battery storage?
Doesn't really affect how much solar you need in order to meet your energy needs. You know, it's just that's a function of how much does your house use. You should make your house as efficient as you can, first and foremost, in my opinion. That's what I always advise
Right.
people. But I wanted to speak to that also as far as the cost of batteries. You know, it takes a long time to pencil out if you're just using it for peak shaving, to charge it, you know, and then dispatch it when it's the energy would otherwise be expensive. And that's another reason why if you can stack the value of that battery with your ownership of your automobile, all of a sudden the battery is just, it's part of your vehicle. It's not, you don't need that stationary battery anymore. It's like, it's really raises the value of that energy storage because it has multiple uses, your transportations, moving people, goods, services, and even energy.
Mm-hmm. And it has so much more energy storage capacity than what you would get in a home battery system anyway.
Yeah, massive. And as far as one thing I wanted to say on the recyclability of batteries, a lot of EV batteries that they've lost enough range for people to feel they're useful. They make perfectly suitable stationary storage batteries. I don't know if Proterra is doing that, Holly, if you're doing Second Life for stationary systems.
Right. Yeah. I was sort of touching on that a little bit. I mean, our batteries last a really long time. We have been delivering vehicles for, 10 years, but we've only started our battery factory in 2017. So we have not gotten any batteries yet that have actually come to the end of their life in a bus. But the Proterra batteries will be more used in larger scale applications than in a home. One of our battery packs is, it's just too big and heavy to put in a home setting. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We're definitely looking at that. And we've started a program to help our customers use those batteries in a second life stationary storage application after they're in the bus.
Yeah, I think there's
I want to point out, a lot of people live in buses. So your bus could become a house and be totally electric and awesome.
True. Yeah.
I have had people reach out and ask, if we have secondhand buses they can buy. And people are often surprised to hear, not only do we not have, secondhand buses that we're selling to anybody who wants one, but a brand new Proterra bus is about $750,000. So you might as well just buy a house at that point.
Yeah.
But a house on wheels is pretty nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to, can you guys hear me? Put a couple, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got a call from mom. So, my Bluetooth headset. There are a couple of sustainability managers on the call, Sigal and Adrian, who our cities have fleets, have cars that could be converted to electric cars, which could be batteries, which could power our city halls or our rec centers. Just curious about what any of you think about the market for our cities, either Adrian or Sigal or any of the panelists, of what's the integration between our vehicle fleets and our municipal buildings.
Hello, I can speak to that. Sigal, can everyone
Yeah,
hear me?
hey.
Hi. We have a long ways to go. We have a pretty small fleet. We are just starting now to think about, we have a few hybrid electric vehicles, but we're really taking it more seriously now. We just passed an ordinance for an EV first policy that our fleet manager now has to consider EV first, no matter what new vehicle is purchased. But once we start ramping up our number of EVs, we'll have to think about the infrastructure to support that. And batteries, I think, are really interesting. We just aren't quite there yet, but I hope to be also. As we build our new facilities, we have a new community rec center coming up. Our city hall really needs some help. Hopefully it'll be incorporated in the development of those buildings as well, or thought about. But in short, we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
I could touch on a little bit about that, the V2G aspect. I know someone asked a little bit about it in the chat as well. And, that's definitely a question that comes up a lot for us. And what we're seeing in the world of vehicle to grid for commercial vehicles is, in line with what you were just saying, that it's definitely early stages. It's not like there are a lot of projects right now out there where people are using large electric vehicles to send power back to the grid. There have been some small pilot projects, they're testing it out, but it's starting to take off more. Utilities are very interested in it. And what we're seeing is a lot of interest on the electric school bus side, because those buses actually have a different duty cycle where they are out picking up kids in the morning, and then they're sitting there during the day before they need to do their drop-off in the afternoon. So during the day, when the solar is all producing, the electric school bus can be charging using the clean energy coming from the grid that's at a cheaper price during off-peak time. And then in the afternoon, they can drop off the kids, and they can come back and actually, if they have the right size battery for the situation and the right charger, then they could send power back to the grid during peak times. Not only could that make some money back for them, it could help the grid, with smoothing things out, because they get these big peaks and they get these, times when less energy is being used, and that's challenging and expensive for the grid. And currently, what the utilities do during those peak times is they sometimes have to turn on these extra power plants that are called peaker plants. And those are not only very expensive, but they are often very dirty, and they're running on coal. So, the whole concept of battery storage and V2G is looking very attractive for that application, to reduce the need for peaker plants. And specifically for school buses, their schedule just matches up really well with the grid needs. But again, it's very early stages. At Proterra, we have just made our first few deals with V2G, vehicle to grid. So we have, those chargers getting installed now. They'll start testing this year. We'll actually be turning on the V2G, early next year. And those are, very close partnerships with utilities. So we're seeing utilities actually get interested in purchasing school buses and purchasing and owning the chargers so that they can, utilize that technology. And that is obviously helping with the hurdle of having more expensive, electric buses, because they do cost more than your typical diesel bus.
That's cool. So our PG&E is going to get in the school bus business?
Well, actually, we haven't gotten a deal with PG&E yet, but we have in Virginia and Michigan and in Massachusetts. Those are where our first 3 projects are going in this year for it.
That's
so
cool.
Dominion Energy, the big utility, they're pretty forward thinking. They've bought 20 buses and they're testing it out.
Interesting. Very cool. Sally Lou has a question. I want to ask you to unmute yourself.
Oh, thanks. I had a couple questions. Sorry. My first question, I was really curious about the medically vulnerable customers, and you know, I'm an engineer, so I love numbers. Like, you know, like how big is that portion of our community, and what's the timeline of working with, you were saying, with different nonprofits? I'm curious who they are as well, to getting these customers supported. And then I had a personal question. I was really fascinated by this discussion about the this unit that would allow your car battery to be utilized as a stationary battery. And it almost, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you almost don't need to, you know, buy a Tesla Powerwall or whatever. You would really just use your car. So two separate questions.
Yeah, Kirsten, why don't you take the first one?
Sure, yeah. So we have kind of incomplete data about the number of these medically vulnerable residents in our service territory. One is because the medical baseline discount, which is how the best tool we have right now for knowing who these folks are, is seriously undersubscribed. Our Department of Public Health is in the process of putting together their own list based on, you know, lists from Medicare and Medi-Cal and various, you know, the San Mateo County Health Plan and various local hospitals, and apparently it's much larger. According to the medical baseline list, which we have, the undersubscribed list, the one that's not complete, you know, we think that maybe, well, PG&E thinks that 270 medical baseline accounts were impacted twice during the last PSPS event. I think it was larger than that. I think their records are not complete. I think it was maybe 300 to 400 based on various data sets I've put together. And that it's likely that maybe 100 of those were also low income. And the nonprofits that we are in conversation with and very close to being contracted with are senior co-siders in Half Moon Bay, and they are co-located with some low-income senior housing and work very closely with additional senior housing in Half Moon Bay. There's almost 500 units of senior housing in Half Moon Bay, so you have the combination of this area that's really, you know, impacted by these PSPS events and a lot of seniors. And including, you know, seniors who are in apartments and you know, can't install their own solar and battery systems. And then the other nonprofit we're looking at working with is Puente de la Costa Sur in Pescadero. They do bilingual outreach in English and Spanish and work a lot with the farm worker population on the coast. And we are actually, you know, looking at rolling out outreach that in a couple of weeks.
Excellent. And John, if you want to take the other one?
Sure, yeah. So, Sally, yeah, you're right. It actually eliminates the cost of having energy storage. If you are planning on having solar and you own an EV or are planning on purchasing one, the energy storage is free. It's like there's no extra cost other than the LCL decibel, which is replacing your solar inverter anyway. We're doing a project, actually a municipal project in Fairfax, the city of Fairfax, town of Fairfax, where it is cutting the cost of that system in half. And the only reason it's not cutting it even further is because we still plan to put in some stationary storage, some stationary batteries as well. But we cut the amount of stationary storage from 30 kilowatt hours down to 10. So it really drastically cut the cost of energy storage for that municipal.
Could you tell us about that project?
Sure. Yeah, this is a community center in Fairfax that has existing solar, and it has, right now it powers 4 separate buildings. So we're going to take one of the inverters and replace it, one that has failed, and replace it with a decibel inverter. And we're adding a small amount of energy storage, stationary storage, as I said. So that building will provide community power in outages and PSPS events for the community of Fairfax, San Anselmo, San Rafael, which are all kind of interconnected, and even some of West Marin potentially. And then the other interesting thing is, like, these are city vehicles or anybody's vehicle that can go there and power the building. And those vehicles can also go back to the homes and within the community and power any other structure that has the system. So it's a pretty radical rethink of.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So like going to charge your cell phone at your friend's house, you just take your car to the community center and power it up. And I think you'd said that there's fast charging as part of the unit.
Yeah, it's a DC direct charging with very low ripple. If you're an engineer, you probably understand what that means, but it means there's very little battery degradation, and it's very fast. It charges at a rate of about 1 mile per minute, which is faster than any other level 2 charger in the world.
Excellent, thank you. Larry, you have a question?
Yeah, Paul and I had a little interchange here in the chat, and I just want to bring up the forum for everybody. Recreational vehicles, and I know they don't deal in those directly, but what got me going on the question of RVs is our neighbors just across the street, they've got this mammoth Tioga, and they're heading back to Salina, Kansas, where they're from, and I'm saying, my God, that's got to be using a lot of gas. So I'm just curious if there are now electric-powered RVs made. Are there going to be more of them? And I understand since we've been in the pandemic, this is an emerging market. There's been a lot of demand for RVs. So I'm just, all of your thoughts or anybody else's thoughts on the RVs that are electric-powered?
Tiny House Nation.
Yeah, I realized I was responding to you, but the chat made me respond privately to somebody else. So sorry if I sent the wrong person a message about electric RVs. But anyway, so I'm not sure. I would have to double check if there actually is a fully electric RV on the market. I don't know of one, so I haven't heard any big news about it. I'm sure that there's a company out there that has announced a concept car for it. You know, there's basically been a concept car announced for everything going electric now. But the way that to think about it is basically the vehicle markets that will go fully electric first before any other ones are ones that currently have high mileage, high annual mileage in a reliable way, right? So RVs all depend on how much you use it. And if you're not using it all the time, it's going to be harder to recoup the value. So high mileage, and then vehicles that currently have very low efficiency. So a diesel bus gets 4 miles a gallon. Electric school bus is similar. Predictable routes. So you know where you can put your chargers, you know how that vehicle is going to perform each day. And these are, you know, some of the reasons that public transit is going to be the first segment to go fully electric, partly due to those reasons, partly due to incentives, mandates. You know, California has the innovative clean transit rule where they have actually said all buses in California, all public transit buses must be electric by 2040. And cities all across the country are coming out with these mandates. So those kind of policies will impact different vehicle segments. And, you know, so things like RVs and long haul trucking, those ones are going to be later down the line because you have unpredictable routes. You have to go a really long distance. It's harder to manage the charging infrastructure. But when an electric RV comes out, I'm there, and we should go on a trip because it sounds awesome.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
And you know, the other thing I'll just note on that is that for our bus to go, you know, 200 miles, say we have different models, but our standard model goes about 200 miles a day. You have basically got to fill up most of the floor of that entire bus with battery packs. So, I mean, it is a huge amount of energy, and it's, like I said, it's expensive. It's about $200,000 more than a diesel bus costs. So we still use incentives, and you get lower maintenance costs, and all of that helps with the, you know, return on investment. But you need the vehicle to be able to physically hold enough battery storage to get it where it needs to go. So yeah, that market will be one of the last ones, I think.
Yeah. Unless you get the Tioga and the big manufacturers behind it, but I have no idea where these RV kind of manufacturers are in this whole issue at this point. I don't know.
Speaking of big companies, what big company is going to transform this market in terms of, I think Lyft just announced that they were going to have all electric vehicles, or is Google going to come out with something, or Uber? Who's going to shake this market up, do you think?
You know, I think Lyft could, or, you know, potentially any boxer. Let's think about if Lyft has EVs and they start delivering power as well as people. That could be a pretty interesting change.
It's hard to know too. I mean, Amazon said we're going to buy all electric vehicles, and they're not even making them; they're just buying them. So it could come from the customers too. That will change the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're contracting with Rivian for their trucks.
Rivian, yeah.
And Peninsula Clean Energy has actually been in conversation with Lyft to incentivize drivers in San Mateo County to use electric cars on their routes as a pilot project.
Mm-hmm.
How would that work?
I think we're still working out the details on that.
Like maybe if you open up the Lyft app, I've heard concepts like you open up the app and you might, you know, if you're physically located around here, you might get the option to wait a few extra minutes to choose an electric car. That's one concept I've heard of.
Right, and then I think also some cash incentives to the driver for potentially for leasing an electric car, or helping them directly work with organizations that help drivers lease electric cars for Lyft driving.
Yeah.
And then coupled with that ability for the consumer to choose a preference for a pickup an electric car. So still working out the details on that.
Interesting. Patrick, did you chat me? You had a question?
It did.
Okay.
Kind of more of a policy question, but I remember when we got our solar power a while ago, if you produced excess and sold it back to the grid, it was like a very small amount. Is there any movement on that, or where do we think that's going?
So when Peninsula Clean Energy buys your solar back, we buy it back at a much better rate than PG&E. So PG&E was buying it back, as you mentioned, not a particularly great rate. Peninsula Clean Energy actually buys it back at the Eco 100 rate. So that is retail, the same price that you would pay for your electricity plus a penny subsidy. So it's actually, you're getting a good deal now when you sell your electricity back to the grid, and you have been for a couple of years with Peninsula Clean Energy.
Thank you. It's too bad we now use more than we used to have that issue. We were selling back. Don't have that issue anymore. I'm mindful of the time. Do we have any last questions before we wrap up?
I did want to mention that the Power on Peninsula program that I'm talking about, you are getting a preview of something that's not on our website yet. This is something that's going to roll out in a couple of weeks. So it's actually like the contract's going to our board tonight.
If it passes, right?
Yeah, if it passes, exactly. So this is all a preview. And so I put the link to our newsletter in the chat. We can sign up to get more details on this as this rolls out in the next couple of weeks.
Great. We'd love to closing comments from everyone.
I'd like to make a comment on something that was asked earlier about recyclability and rare earth metals. You know, not all batteries are the same chemistry. There's batteries that don't have any cobalt that all have mostly iron content, lithium ferrous phosphate. So they're much friendlier on the environment. So when you purchase an energy storage system, you have that choice as to what type of battery you want to put in your home. Lithium cobalt is typically used for EVs because it has the highest energy density, but there are other types for stationary use.
Yep, it's a great point.
I guess I'd put out there that two thoughts. One is that thermal storage is a legitimate way of having energy that you need when you need it. Now, it's like I said, it doesn't convert to electricity to do other things, but having hot water is a nice thing. And it's an inexpensive strategy. The other one is, I just want to reinforce that of all the different, since batteries are expensive, getting a battery that you already want to drive around seems to be the least expensive way to get a battery in your life, so that it provides double service or triple service. But having it just be a car misses a large opportunity. So Wallbox is coming out with the Quasar, John mentioned Asiaco's DC Bell, and Tesla right now, their newest cars are wired to do vehicle to building charging. They just haven't put in the software to enable it, but they've officially made the capability in the machine to do it. So I think that that is the most cost-effective way to get a battery. That's my affordable housing hat on.
I could make a quick final comment. Just that, you know, with everything we've been dealing with this pandemic, you know, one thing that's kind of interesting about it and that has affected, you know, the way that I'm marketing to our customers is that people have become more focused on the importance of clean air and how much pollution from transportation and other things, but transportation is, you know, the leading cause of air pollution, how much that affects public health and respiratory issues. So, you know, for me in what I do, we have started emphasizing that message a little bit now that people are thinking more about how important it is that we have clean air, not just to help the environment, but actually for the health of everybody in our community. So hopefully, you know, we can come out of this situation with, you know, an eye on these cleaner technologies. We are still seeing public transit agencies, you know, move forward with their electrification programs, but there's definitely a lot up in the air, and people are hesitant right now to get back on public transit, of course, because of the pandemic. But there have been studies coming out that it's really not the most dangerous place for you to get sick. But anyway, I mean, just thinking that I hope we can move forward with, you know, clean technology, and that maybe this pandemic could actually help people become a little bit more aware of the benefits of all this, you know, battery storage and solar, aside from just helping the environment, because when it comes to your own health, it hits home a lot more. So for some people, you know, I get pretty freaked out about the environment, but not everybody does. So yeah, I'll leave with that comment.
So I'd like to reach out to you all and ask you all to reach out to your CCAs and your IOUs, all the utility companies, and ask them to incentivize more of this type of technology where you can, you know, not only will they incentivize solar and storage through your vehicles, but be able to use those vehicles as an asset for their operations, help balance the grid. Everybody wins. You end up with a much, much cleaner mode of transportation and energy generation in that manner.
John, I'm happy to connect you with our programs folks.
Great, that'd be fantastic.
Excellent.
Thank you so much those were great words to end on, Holly, finding silver linings in our pandemic, that hopefully this can move the conversation forward. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, where people are really concerned about their own health as well as the health of the planet. And this just brought it into light. And these are possible solutions, things to move to a better place. And to John with the call to action. So those are great ways to end. I want to thank our panelists, Holly and John and Kirsten and Sean, and a huge thank you to Doug for pulling the panel together. We're not going to have a meeting in July because turns out the plastic paper is a lot of work, and we want to get that completely done and ready, and hopefully we can present that in August. If anybody has a specific interest in either what our next couple of events should be focused on, or if you want to be a speaker on one of our events, please reach out to Doug or to me. And thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. You also.